All right. So we have 10 of us. We're supposed to be 13 or 14. So I think I will leave that to MM to try to get people to come in so we do not waste too much time. So you can see that I've already shared my screen, so we can go quickly to start off what we have to do today. Once again, I welcome every one of us. We have about 6 slides to run through in these 2 hours. I'll try as much as possible to run through them, and of course, not leaving out very vital points that we need to note. But very importantly, we already have all these materials. Whatever we need to work on, please permit me to quickly adjust something on my second laptop here, so it doesn't give me issues later. Display and auto lock. Okay, unfortunately, it might run the battery down, but still prefer. Okay, so we would quickly see how we can run through and ensuring we're not leaving out anything. So today we're starting off with the Montessori philosophy, like I shared with us in our last class during the orientation class. We have altogether about 3 classes for the Montessori philosophy. And like I said, it's really very wide, and I do not want to leave anything because it's the core of this training. Once we're able to get this philosophy, it will help us with our practice. And when we get to presentation of the activities, the lesson plans and all that, having the knowledge of the philosophy and the science of teaching, the practice and the method, the pedagogy of Montessori method, it will just make it much, much easier for us. So it's more like the bedrock. And that's why it's absolutely very important that we get this going. So this is lecture 1. I want to quickly say a big thank you to Mr. Sentley Odugide. I'm mixing that. I don't think it's in already. He quickly sent a note to me to say that lecture 2 was missing in the folders that I uploaded in the Google folder. Initially, I thought that I planned it, but going through it, I found out that it was an omission. So in our Google folders, I've already uploaded the lecture 2. And of course, we're going to run through it today. So what we want to start with as we look at the Montessori philosophy is the fact that the Montessori method is not a standalone. Maria Montessori did not just develop her theory or develop her method just by herself. She had to study other child development theories, other philosophers, other educators that had done 1 or 2 things before her, and using them as a foundation, she was able to build and also expand her own philosophy and principle when we talk about the Maria Montessori method. So what we want to run through now, I'm not going to spend too much time here because the core of the philosophy is Maria Montessori's, and everything in the Maria Montessori philosophy, Maria Montessori's method is inclusive of all these other educational philosophers. So if you want to know more about them, that's why I have all these details on the slide for us. You can go later on your own to just read more about them, find out about what their philosophy was around education. So I will just be running through these philosophers. So the first one we have here is Plato. And Plato's educational philosophy centered on the idea that education should help people learn about the world and the good life. He believed that education should be lifelong and that all people should have equal opportunities to learn. So everything around Plato's educational philosophy was around this. All knowledge is latent within us. He believed that we should focus on developing the mind and the character of individuals. So Maria Montessori was able to pick from this philosophy and build on her own method. The next one there is Quintilian. He was also he advocated a controlled home life with only suitable role models. Little can be taught. He believed that little can be taught before the age of 7. He was a Roman educator and a teacher of rhetoric who believed that education should develop character and also prepare students for life. Like I said, this is not our core, so we are not spending too much time here. We will just brush through them, and so we can get to where we're going. We have another philosopher here that Maria Montessori studied. This particular individual, Comenius, proposed to teach all things to all men. He proposed one teaching method for all subjects in all schools. Also, another is John Locke. John Locke is someone that he was the one that settled more on this phrase, tabula rasa. Of course, it's a Greek word, which means that the mind is a blank slate. So he believed that it is, tabula rasa is an idea that philosophers have explored for thousands of years. It refers to the concept that when people are born, they essentially have a blank slate. So life experiences and education around them is what will form that individual. And as we go deeper into the Montessori method, we would find out and discover the spiritual embryo that talks about the fact that at birth, the mind of the child is completely bare, and it is actually waiting for experiences, exploration, and education that is hands-on around him or her so that knowledge can be developed. So these are the part of the philosophers that Maria Montessori built her theory on. Also, we have Rosa. Rosa was the father of child-centered education and also believed in value of tutoring, believed in the value of tutoring, and he believed in the education that we need to follow the child's natural development. And as we go into study Maria Montessori, you will discover that this is the core of Maria Montessori's philosophy. We need to follow the child. Education that is child-centered. Education where the teacher is the facilitator and where the child actually directs his or her own learning. So she was able to pick from Jean-Jacques' philosophy. So the same principle around Joanne. Joanne was a Swiss educator who believed that education should engage the whole child. And his philosophy is known as the head, the heart, and the hand. The head is where you develop critical thinking and problem solving. The heart is the emotional side of education, emotional development through empathy, compassion, and moral education. And of course, the hand is the development of the practical skills, hands-on learning to apply knowledge in a real world setting. Now, in the little that we've discussed in Maria Montessori, you know that Maria Montessori's philosophy also talks a lot about this, the holistic development of the child, the mind, the body, and the spirit, and the soul. When you talk about the soul is the seat of the mind. So all of this is encapsulated in this method of education. All right, Froebel is one of the very popular philosophers that would encounter, for those of us who have had to study child development. His philosophy was, he based his philosophy on Pestalozzi's philosophy, that is, first 3 years, the child needs contact with nature. All that we have discussed with Maria Montessori, you know that her philosophy is around this. And he was an educational philosopher that centered his philosophy on play and self-activity. He considered childhood as the most important stage of total development of human and humanity. It was during his own method that kindergarten era was birthed. That's the nursery that we know today in our school setting. He stressed the value of play. Of course, we know that play is not play as we think of it, but play is also learning for children. Virtually all of us do this with our children today. In those of us who are already working in the classroom environment, we know that play-based learning is absolutely very key for children between that age group, 0 to 6. All right. So we have John Dewey here also, and if you look at it, you find that a lot of these philosophers were influenced by previous philosophers. So most of the time, they study, read through, and then develop further on what they have learned, which was, of course, what Maria Montessori did. Of course, she had to expand more on her own research to develop her method. And I guess I want to believe that that's why her method till today, 100 years, I think it was like about 6-7 years ago, that 100 years of her Maria Montessori's method was celebrated all over the world. Her method really has come to stay. So John Dewey focused on learning through experimenting and exploring possibilities. Same with Margaret. She was a pioneer of the nursery school movement. She advocated close links between nursery and home. Like I said, quite a lot of all these philosophers, the principles are, the philosophy is, they are related because they are influenced by previous philosophers. A lot of us, Rudolf Steiner is one of the popular method that is close to Maria Montessori method. There are a lot of schools. It's not very popular in Africa, but in Europe, there are a lot of schools who use the Steiner method. Steiner was an Austrian philosopher, and he believed that education should develop the total child, just like Maria Montessori. His idea are the basis of the Waldorf education. So when you hear about the Steiner Waldorf education, it's, like I said, it's very popular in Europe. A lot of schools run the system. And the key principle for Waldorf education is, I think there are about 5 or 6 of them. Holistic development. He believes that education should develop the mind, the body, and the soul. Also, one of the principles is play-based learning. He emphasized learning through play, child-centered, then respect for developmental stages, art integration. He believes strongly that in education, the child's developmental stages is absolutely very key, and is always a focus in that method of education. Then we have Maria Montessori. So you can see that we started the years following. If you look at it from the beginning, from the first slide, we're building on the years as it was going. So this is Maria Montessori. We'll talk more about Maria Montessori because that's where we are going in this philosophy. So we'll skip that. And then we have Susan Isaac. Susan Isaac was, sorry. Okay, yes. Susan Isaac's main legacy, she was more like the one that birthed the concept of observation in early childhood education. She emphasized the importance of play and learning also. She used Montessori apparatus and method for reading and writing. So in other words, Susan Isaac was after Maria Montessori's method started, but she had that legacy when it comes to child observations. So when you look at the different key, initially when I was going through this course, I said, should I include observation? You know, observation is a major part of early childhood course. So maybe what I would do is just bring it in a little bit and give us all the ideas of the different method of this different method for observation, the checklist method, there are about almost 3 or 4 different methods that you can use. The timing method, you can use the narrative method to observe children so that you can plan their lessons and plan activities for them based on their sensitive periods, like we have learned in all our mini courses on our platform. Next is Tina Bruce. This Tina Bruce, there's a book by her. In fact, I remember when I was doing my training, I read that book cover to cover, because when you're talking about, I hope I'm still recording. Yes, sorry.
Yes, now you are.
Okay, all right. So Tina Bruce was the one that, when you talk about, of course, she was an early childhood expert, but when you talk about play-based learning, she did a major discovery, research in play-based learning. In fact, she was able to develop 10 principles of best practice in early childhood education. I can run through them. Children need choices in their learning. Children learn best through first-hand experiences. Children need time to become deeply involved in activities. Children learn through their own initiative. Play is essential for development and learning. Children learn through social interaction, and so on and so forth. Please go and do some of this research yourself. Everything around her child-based learning, of course, she borrowed quite a lot from Maria Montessori's method. And that's why if we're doing a deep, full training in Montessori method, you can't but read through her resource materials, because there's a whole lot to learn from those principles that she developed, and all the different methods for observing children while they are at play. And then you can do a whole lot with that knowledge. Okay, let's move quickly. So now we are here to talk about Maria Montessori. Also, I will say to us that for our class today, we are not able to, what slide is this? Sorry, permit me to, my other laptop is giving me issue here. Okay. All right. So I would recommend that we do, as part of our assignment, of course, we are not submitting this one. Please go, Google is your friend. Go and do further research on Maria Montessori's journey in Italy and how she was able to, we'll discuss a little bit in the class here today, but you will also need to do extra homework. Just read more about her. It will give you all that knowledge. She was a phenomenal woman, giving so much to the fact that at the time when she started finding out about educating the young child, education in Italy was not even giving room for women, not for female gender, for that gender. It was more focused on the male gender. So she had to fight through, break through that norm, break the glass ceiling to be able to achieve what she did. So her story is worth studying, it's worth it for us to find out more about her and get to know about this woman. So at the age of 12, children could not, this was education in Italy. Maybe after this slide, I will quickly run through what education in Italy was, or I won't do that so we don't take too much time. I will send that slide to you so you can read through and just have an understanding of what education was like in the time of Maria Montessori and how she could break through that barrier. At the age of 12, children could not leave school. I mean, at the age of 12, children could leave school and go to work. That was what education was like then. And if teen, they start to specialize in specific subject. In fact, I know I read somewhere that the female gender could only learn to go to become a teacher, maybe a grade 2 teacher, what we used to do several years ago. But they couldn't study beyond that. It was the men that would go into university and all that. So education was based on rote learning of facts, on training rather than teaching. Education in that time was, something similar to what we could still see in some African countries today. Thank God for Nigeria. Of course, if we go to some villages, we still find those kind of things when you're talking about a country where we still have people who study under trees. Yes, in Nigeria, we still have such situation. But so education was more of training rather than teaching in those days. So who was Maria Montessori? She was born on the 31st of August, 1870. At age 12, her family moved to Rome. She attended secondary school for boys due to interest in math. So she had, normally girls would go to what they call, like maybe what we call a grammar school today, something like that. There was a special school for girls because they couldn't pass a particular stage of education level. But she wanted to do much more than that. So she, in fact, the story I read was that her name, somehow when she was to be registered, the name that was written was a name for maybe something like Marcel instead of Maria. So it was that name that was registered. So they didn't know that it was a female gender that was given admission until when she resumed in the school. They found out that she's female, but of course she stayed and continued her study. At age 16, technical college, she went off to technical college to study mathematics and engineering. At 32, she applied for medical school. We'll talk more about her level, but we want to jump that to talk about something that was very common during her time too in Italy, the education in Italy, what is known as a principle of repression. So there was the physical bench, and of course, the bench of the soul. So the physical bench actually refers to the physical classroom furniture that children were meant to sit in. Unfortunately, even in the 21st century that we're in today, we still have this kind of furnitures. So you have furnitures that would restrict movement. Children are not, and that's why you find that in a Montessori classroom, children have, they have furnitures that even children between that age group 3 to 6 can lift their chairs. 2 or 3 of them can lift their tables by themselves. So there's no form of repressing them physically. There is freedom of movement, but guided freedom of movement. But in those days, those are the times that we have benches. You know, children, you can imagine a long bench with a long table, and children just sit. A child who is sitting like the 6th plate cannot readily come out. So children are just restricted. There is no movement. A bench in its most basic form is a structure designed for sitting. However, when examined from a philosophical, sociological, and educational perspective, it can represent control, it represents conformity, and it represents limitation. So the fact that that furniture itself is a form of repression. It was not giving room for movement. Movement is minimized. Curiosity is suppressed. And when we're talking about education for young children, that movement is very key. And that's what you find today in the Maria Montessori method. Remember the video I shared with us on the platform, where you see that the children moving around. And because the children have been guided, the children have ground rules, they have learned how to move along their space, they have learned to consider other people when other people in the community where they're working. They are able to move freely, but also they are guided and they are controlled in their movement. So in the traditional classroom, then, unfortunately, we still have those kind of situations. That's why you'll find that there's some early years setting where you'll find beautifully designed tables and chairs. But what it's doing is actually conforming children down. So you find that children, and that's why Maria Montessori method, or even early childhood method, would not recommend children who are toddlers to be locked down and sitting down in one position for activity. They should be able to leave that space when they want to move, to do something, and come back there by themselves. When children have to sit on furnitures where the adults will have to help them to come out from that sitting position, then they are being repressed. That is a physical bench. You know what they talk about in the courtroom, where they say now you can approach the bench. The bench is a place of judgment. It's a place where either the accused come or the witness will come. So those are the kind of things that we had in the educational system. Then unfortunately, we still have them today. And of course, the bench of the soul. The bench of the soul is more of the internal seat, the seat of emotion, the seat of dreams, the seat of idea, the seat of exploration, the seat of problem solving. And most of the time, that soul, where the mind is always waiting to express itself, is always waiting to find out, is always waiting to know what is around its environment. But when a child is repressed physically, then that child will not be able to explore. That child will not be able to find out, will not be able to express what is inside of him or her. And that way, the soul of that child is being repressed. Even as an adult can be repressed. And that's where we start to talk about depression. When you find an individual who is, I know we have a psychologist here, our doctor with us here. That's part of the things we know, that depression, when you are sad, when you are unhappy for a long period of time, and you are not able to express how you are feeling. When you talk about depression, how does it come? People are in unhappy situation, unhappy circumstances, but they are not able to express themselves. And once they are not able to express, they repress that feeling, and then they become depressed. So when children don't have the opportunity to explore, when they don't have opportunity to experience their immediate environment so that they can acquire the knowledge that they need to develop themselves innately, then they are being repressed. And this is what Montessori method stays away from completely. So in a nutshell, today, there stands for one urgent need. And what is the need? The reform of methods in education and instruction. And he who struggles towards this end is struggling for the regeneration of man. This was written in one of Maria Montessori's books. I'm going to share a lot of books with us. In fact, I'll be reading from some of her books. Maria Montessori method, like I shared with us in our last class, there are some books you cannot but get. If you really want to know about this method and you want to run it like you ought to, then you will need to get some of these materials. So there's a need for reformation, and I know that's why we're all here. That's why we are here to learn, to do it better, to acquire more skill so we can be better educators in the space where we operate and work with our children. So this is the beginning. This is the beginning. What I did was I put some things down so I do not forget what I want to share with us. So what happened to her was the mental clinic in Rome. What was our experience there? Maria Montessori was an assistant doctor in this mental clinic. And she had occasion to frequent the asylum to study sick people, to be chosen for purpose of clinical teachings, because of course she was studying medicine. In this way, she became very interested in what they now we call them special needs children. But then they used to call them idiot children. So her desire to want to know more about the child, she was working in that mental clinic, and she was an assistant doctor. She was still in training. And because she had to frequent the asylum for clinical teaching cases, through her interest in the deficient children, she came to know a special method of education devised by Segon, Edward Segon. In fact, there's a particular Montessori material in math that was named after Segon, because Maria Montessori did a whole lot of studying on Segon's philosophy, and also another person called Itard. Itard was a specialist. He was a doctor who was a specialist in disease for the ear. And he did he encountered, I think we'll talk about that later, but if we don't get there, let me quickly say it. Itard was the one that discovered the young boy, the boy of Averon. I don't know how many of us know about that cartoon. Averon was discovered. I think the boy was just about, he was not up to, I think 9 years old. He was discovered in the wild. It was not Itard that discovered him, but the people in the community discovered him in like a forest. So apparently that young boy has been living in the forest alone with animals and all that till about the age of 9. And they brought him into the human world, but the child couldn't cope. In fact, he had to, one day he ran out, ran away and went back again into the woods. So Itard was the one that did a major research work on that boy, the boy in the wood, and tried to see if he could be civilized, because he couldn't communicate with humans. Of course, the boy that grew up with animals in the wild, so he acted like one of those. But he did a whole lot of research on him and was able to develop him to a particular state, but definitely he could just say maybe 1 or 2 phrases of human language. And Itard wrote a whole, about 600 pages of his research on this boy and what he did and what he discovered in a book. And Maria Montessori, because of how passionate she was in his research, she was reading through Segon and reading through Itard's research. She had to translate Itard's writing, 600 pages, into Italian language, all by herself. So like I said, she was a very phenomenal woman. Anyway, she was given the task after some time by the Minister of Education to given the work to conduct a course of lectures on education for mentally defective children. And she was meant to run this course for common teachers of elementary schools in Rome. Later, she was working in an institute for the special needs children. So it was at this place that Maria Montessori now started carrying out educative experiments on children. And that was between that time, 1898 to 1900. It was at that period, this pedagogical institute, that the birth of Montessori pedagogy happened, because she started working for about 2 years. She did a practical work on the approach, finding out about the children, looking for ways to be able to educate these children that they call retards or they call idiots. But of course, we know that they were special needs children. All right. I don't want to bore us with these plenty things because I'm talking in my head. I'm like, I hope you are following. Should I continue with my story? Are we all there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
We are really
Okay.
Yes,
enjoying
ma'am.
the story.
Don't just bear with me. We'll get to the fun parts very soon. That's why I said I will want us to go and study more about her, read about her. Like I said, because of her desire to want to know more about how to educate the special needs children who had mental issues, she just discovered that it's possible for these children to be able to learn. And that's how she became a student of philosophy. I talked about Jean Itard. I said the creator of auditory is the study of the disease of the ear. And of course, he became the guardian of Savage of Aveyron. That's the boy that was discovered in the wild. And again, she started studying the second method. I've said all this earlier on. So at this stage, let me quickly wrap it up here. I want us to go and read more about Maria Montessori's history. What she now did was, in the process of her studying and observing the children, she discovered that, of course, because she became a student of philosophy, reading up on all the past philosophers, like all the ones I've shared with us, and their method, and she started applying it to these special needs children. She did it to the point that, this is just me paraphrasing now because I have a feeling that I'm talking too much theory. So I will leave it for us to go and read. Like I said, I will share some other things that we can read on her. But the conclusion of it was that she, aside from the fact that she was assisting in the research and all that, she was a medical doctor. She started discovering these children, reading more about other philosophers. She became a philosopher herself, reading about the philosophy of education. And then she started practicing what she was learning on those children. In fact, at a time in the community, I will show you the picture later, she started working with a group of children, because what she did was, of course, she had these special needs children that she was working with as per the institutes where she was working. But then in that community, there was in fact, when I tell my colleagues, I used to say is I look at it like a military barracks. So there was a particular community where there were more of factory workers who used to work in that community. And most of the time, once they leave the house and go to their place of work, to the factory, they just leave the children. And the children would just be all over the place, roaming the street. You know, the way we have children all over some of our communities, even in Nigeria. But she decided to pick these children and started putting to practice what she was already observing and what she was learning. In fact, by the time she finished working on these special needs children, she took them not just from them working with materials, because she started developing the materials herself. The materials were originally hers. It was not in what she was learning. But then she also now started introducing reading and writing with her method. Don't forget what I said. She didn't just start like that. She read other philosophies and then built on it. And she got to the point where those children who were regarded as idiots then, special needs children, sat for the same examination that normal children would sit for, and they did better than the normal children. So everybody, they were wowed. That was the birth of that method. And they started talking about it. And Maria Montessori said, it's not about there was nothing special. So she said that what happened was what the mind of the normal children could not achieve, the mind of the special needs children achieved it. And that's why it seemed like they did better than the normal children. And then voila, she just said, if what she was taking the special needs children through could also be used with the normal children, then they will do excellently well. That's why today you will find that people will say that Maria Montessori method is very good for special needs children. Yes, in our school, we do that. There's a time they bring the special needs children, even if they're in primary school, they bring them to the Montessori classroom, maybe for like an hour or during the work cycle period. And then they carry out activity to help them in some other, and they've been able to do a whole lot with them. Counting, reading, those who have issues with speaking, they've been able to speak. But what this method will now do, or what it did was that those children who were normal could now do excellently well. And that's why they say that the Montessori method would help children who are having challenges. You are able to take them through at their pace to where they're supposed to get to. At the same time, is able to help children who are very excellent to actually do much more better than what they actually are doing presently. So that's the secret with the Maria Montessori method and her story. All right. So I'm jumping now because I want us to, while everyone was admiring the progress of this, this is a quote from her book, Of My Defective, I was thinking of the reasons which may have reduced the healthy, happy pupils of the ordinary schools to a level so low that it could be reached in intelligence test by my unhappy pupils. So that's what I just shared with us. People were so happy when they saw the result of the special needs children. But Maria Montessori said, there's no big deal in what happened. If these other children could experience what the special needs children experience, then they will do way better. All right, so I've talked about this, the second revelation. And this is what Maria Montessori based her theory on, and she used with the children. I don't want to bore us with that theory. Maria Montessori's conclusion: scientific education, while based on science, modified and improved the individual. In fact, she expanded the knowledge of education for people to see it as being scientific. In other words, a whole lot of exploration, a whole lot of research work. And that's what we mean when we talk about pedagogy. It's a science of, is a method, and is a science of practice. A science of education has not the purpose of merely observing, but that of transforming children. So when we talk about educating children in early years, there has to be transformation. There has to be transformation visible in the holistic development of that child. So the new method ought to change completely. Both the school and its method ought to give rise to a new form of education. So my desire, our desire in this program, in this course, for those of us who are running our school presently, by the time we start to go into the core of the Montessori method, there should be a change in the way we present our teachings, in the way we we give the children learning experience in the classroom. The method should be child-centered, not teacher-centered. We'll look more into this as we go on with our slides. Let me quickly move on. Okay, now, of course, let me talk a bit about this. The Casa de Bambini was actually the first school that was opened after Maria Montessori's method started gaining ground. And she started in that building, that community that I talked about, where there were children of factory workers, and she would gather them. And she just started the school there. It was like a house environment. So this was started on the 6th of January, 1907. So this is the building here, the Casa de Bambini. So this is the building, and this is where the classroom was, the school was battered. Okay. So this is the building here, the casa. And this picture was taken in the year 2014. You can imagine what it looked like in the year 1907. It was a slum then, and it's even still a slum in 2014. We don't know what it is now, 11 years after. I don't know if it will be anything different. All right, this is another view of the, please can you help me shut the door? Sorry about that. Okay, so this is another view. So this is Casa de Bambini, founded in 1907. You find that a lot of people, when they start their own Montessori, this is the entrance. Well, just like a house environment, this is the garden. And the children will come out to the garden. Because of course, outdoor is a major thing for early years learning. So the garden, this is another view again of the building. Like I said, this was taken in 2014, sorry. So this is another entrance, the main entrance to the class. Okay, so that is that for our first slide here. And basically what we've looked at in this first slide is the how Maria Montessori method came to be, how the evolution, yes, let me call it the evolution of Maria Montessori method. She didn't just start off one day. Experience and reading up on other philosophy. And of course, her success story, the fact that she could work on those special needs children and get them to sit for the same examination with normal children. Not only were they able to do it, but they did much more better than those children. And that system of education just took over the whole of Europe, and of course, even outside Europe. All right, that's our first slide. Before we go into the second slide, is there any question? Any question? I know we have, I will want to plead with us, like I put there in the in the slide. If you are not going to get any book, go and look for this. It's one of the Montessori series, the 1946 London lectures. Absolutely very, and the reason I like it is if you read this one, The Absorbent Mind, because it's a direct translation from Maria Montessori's Italian language. Sometimes the reading is not very interesting. But this lecture, because it was compiled, it was the London lecture compiled in English, is so clear, so straightforward. You will just enjoy reading it. And it gives you, especially with the Maria Montessori philosophy, it's very clear, you understand it. Like I said, I'll be reading one or two things from inside the book for us to get a clearer understanding. All right, so we know I'm not talking to myself. Oh, are we here?
Yes, ma, we are with you, ma. Thank you.
Oh, you are eating and drinking.
No,
We're together, ma.
we are in the classroom
Yeah,
with
ma.
you, ma.
Okay, so tell me, what are you feeling as I was talking all my jargons? Are you
The
saying what
story
brought
has
me
been
here?
quite interesting.
You want to say something? Let me hear you. Let somebody speak. How is it going?
Yes, ma'am. The story has been quite interesting, ma'am. I don't know. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I
Very
can
well.
hear you clearly.
I said Maria Montessori's story has been quite interesting. And what I can say about it is that she was a determined woman. She was focused, she was determined, and at the end of the day, she break through. She had that breakthrough. That's why we can all read about her, can all tell her story even several years after her death. So what I see in that is that we all have to borrow that aspect of her being committed into our dream, because she had that dream of making these children better to the society, better to their parents, better to the entire world. And that thing was an inner thing before she brought it out in the physical.
Yeah.
So we all have to really buy into that as students of Absorbent Mind school. So we all have to buy into that and keep our commitment tightly. If only we can do that, I see another 14 Maria Montessori in the nearest future.
Excellent. You know, that's
So
one of,
that's my submission.
Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you so much. You know, that's one of the reasons why in Montessori training, we start by talking about Maria Montessori. It is meant to inspire us. And that's exactly what Mrs. Rahim just shared with us, the fact that it is to inspire us to know that if an individual can be so concerned about the education of the child, then I shouldn't be an ordinary educator. I shouldn't just say, oh, I'm running a school and just teaching children how to count 1 to 10, how to read alphabets or say their alphabet and all that. There's so much more to educating a wholly human, and we need to keep working on it, do our own research, build on the research that we're doing, and then we can stand out. All right. Is there any question before we go on to share the next slide? God will help you. Yes, ma.
I have a question, ma.
Yes, ma. Go on, ma.
And my question is based on this copywriting. According to what we have read today, that Maria Montessori actually put together the philosophy of other people. She gathered them together and she applied them in the physical onto the children she came across.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't know whether there were restrictions. Did she face restrictions? Did she face something like copyright protection or something like that?
Because she was always referencing those research.
Philosophers.
Yes, she was referencing them, so there was no copyright issue. That's why whenever we're talking about her, we have to refer to all the philosophers that she studied.
Okay.
And we always say she didn't just come up with her theory. And like I said, you find that there's a bit of some of her materials that were named after her very favorite philosophers. So she didn't have that problem.
Thanks for the explanation.
Yes, ma'am. You find that even a lot of child development theories today, philosophers still use all of this, like the Susan Isaac I talked about. She also borrowed from Maria Montessori's philosophy. Tina Bruce also borrowed from Maria Montessori. Tomorrow now, it could be Kelly that we borrow from Maria Montessori, or Mrs. Rahim that we borrow and then come up with your own philosophy.
Amen. Thank you so
All
much
right.
for that explanation, ma.
You're welcome.
It's well taken.
Okay. All right, let's go quickly to the next slide.
Ma, before you go, ma, I have a question, ma.
Yes, Oluwakemi.
Yes, ma. My question is, in our environment, because I stay in command, in environments where children play, the play is normal in their culture. They're in bringing in Montessori method. Will it not be or have a disadvantage on the children?
So what do you mean by the play? Explain yourself.
They used to play. They're used to play. If you give them a little opportunity to just move, they will play. When you give them, even during the circle hour, you see them playing. So their play is in their system already. And the Montessori system says we have to take it through a play, what they enjoy.
Okay.
Would there not be any disadvantage?
No. So you see that we'll still talk about that is in our in our philosophy of today, where we talk about the deviated child and the normalized child. So when play is not focused, when play is not directed at is not being directed by the inner drive, and the energy is not channeled appropriately, that's when we will see play as play up and down. But because children, the reason they are playing what they are playing, and most of the time you find that the play we complain about, we say, hey, this child, they are disruptive, or this child is playing here and jumping there. It's because there's an energy inside of them. You remember what we called it, the home. The energy is looking for activity to do. The moment you start to channel that energy and that activity towards focused activity that will help develop concentration, as the child is concentrated on activity, there is the development of inner self-will, and obedience comes, self-discipline comes. The children, we say, they become normalized. It does not mean that they are abnormal, but they become normalized because the inner drive for learning is now being channeled appropriately. Because children would also always want to find out. They always want to problem solve. They always want to. So the reason why they jump up and down is because we have not looked for ways to channel those energies appropriately. When we do, you will find that the children will think they are playing. Their play will become work, because we have channeled that energy appropriately. Did I answer your question?
Yes, ma. Thank you, ma.
Good. So we'll get there later, you will see it.
Okay, ma.
Any other question, please? Okay, let's move quickly.
Good evening.
Okay, good evening.
Yes. Just out of curiosity, I noticed the rules. It's 1979. No end date. Is she still alive?
No, she's not alive. Oh. Okay, maybe it was an error. I didn't correct that. What year did she just go and find out about her? I think what year was celebrated recently? What I will send, one of the documents I will send to you is like the timeline. I will send it is in a slide. It gives us the timeline, all her story from 19 days to 19 days, 19 days, you'll see it there. But like I said, I don't want to bore us with those history. History can be very boring. So let's go quickly. All right, so the second slide, education as a help to life. It will be necessary to look to children for help if the world is to be made better. Can you see that this is almost like turning things around? What does Montessori mean by this? Why is she saying that we should look to children for help if the world is a better place? The reason is because the child is endowed with unknown powers. The potential of an enigma to become anything they desire. This potential guides us to a radiant future. I know that if we have been able to take enough time to observe young children, I'm sure this has happened to you. You wonder how children learn. Those of us who are mothers here and fathers, yes, today you hear some people maybe on social media, you see people say, they be telling the children, say dada, say mama. Most of the time, you don't need to say it to them. Unconsciously, one day you are just carrying the child and you hear the child be say dada.
Yes, yes.
So, and what children can learn in that early stage, some things that they can do as adults, we can't do it. I'm sure you know that children between that age group 0 to 6, if they find themselves in an environment where there are 4 different languages spoken in that environment, which English word would I want to use now? That language is, you have 4 individuals, maybe Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, Benin, and they speak those languages constantly, every day. And that child is in that environment. The child will grow up speaking all the 4 different languages effectively. I don't know if we've encountered any of those kind of people before. I used to have a friend. She's, after I schooled in the North, her father is Benin. Her mom is Igala. She grew up, her parents lived in Kaduna. So she grew up in Kaduna. She schooled in Kaduna. And then they were living in a community in Kaduna, Tudunwada in Kaduna, because I schooled in the North. Tudunwada is where you have, where you have people in a particular community, like the way you have them in Lagos, those of us who live in Lagos, where you just have Hausa people living in a particular area. Like if you go to Agege now, Hausa people, they are the ones you'll find there. In Kaduna, in Tudunwada, is Yoruba people that you'll find there. All these people from Oyo, all of them. So they live there as a community. So her father is Benin, her mother is Igala. She grew up in Kaduna, she schooled in Kaduna, and then they were living in Tudunwada. My friend Sylvia, we went to school together in Kaduna Polytechnic then. She speaks all these languages fluently. I used to envy her. We will be together like this. Somebody will speak Yoruba, she will speak it. Another person will come speak Hausa, she was, because as she was growing up, this language, and nobody sat her down and said, oh, yeah, say Nazua, oh, yeah, say Mumbo. She was just punching it from that environment. So to really create a great future Our education must take as its aim the development of the hidden potentials of the child. That's what this Maria Montessori philosophy is all about. Every child that walks into your class, know that there's a potential in this child. In fact, let's not talk about class. Every child that is birthed into life. And that's why you find that as early years educators, all stakeholders, we need to ensure that parents are educated appropriately. They need proper education to know that that child, that in fact, from the first day that that child comes out, that is a great potential that just came out to life. And what that child needs, now people say don't call it prepared environment, because when you say prepared environment, it's like it is just there prepared, but a favorable environment, because a favorable prepared environment will change as the child's developmental staging is evolving. Remember the sensitive period we talked about. So it's not static. It will change as we keep going. So that's what this quote is saying to us, that for us to have a better world, then we need to look at the children for help, knowing that inside of that child, there is so much potential. The greatness of the human personality begins at the hour of birth. The moment that human being comes to life, the greatness of that human personality starts from then. So education must start from birth. That's what Montessori says. It must start from birth. In fact, the truth is, it starts from the womb. How many of us, I'm sure you would have heard about that before. I know that happened for my granddaughter. When my daughter was pregnant with her younger sibling would always go to her and play with her. I think I said it in one of our webinars. And she would, touch her tummy. She'll be talking to the baby in her tummy. Today, this her aunt is her favorite auntie. From when she was in her mother's womb, she could recognize her voice. So when she came to life, they are like paddies, Sometimes her mother will say, that's her mother, that's her second mom. And the same thing we found out with parents. The child is used already to the voice of the mother, the voice of the father, or all the voices around the house, and the child will respond to those voices. So education as a help for life. A science must be created to study this work. What is the work? The construction of man. This was what most of what we are doing in this philosophy, you will see that it's just her quotes. That's what we are building on. It must be studied in all its phases, the study of the construction of human being through the child, who constructs the man to be through experience. I said it in one of our class sessions that the man is already inside the child. And it is through the constructions, through the experiences that we give the child, that the man is developed. Any deficiency that is taking place in childhood will eventually come up in adulthood. I said it in one of our class sessions. That's why today in United Nations, what do you call it? UNESCO, all these things that have to do with World Health Organization, there is a lot. They're now talking about childhood trauma. We have our psychologists here. There's a whole lot. Child psychology is now something so important. In fact, those who go to study child psychology, they are now hot cakes around, because it's a major, major issue. A lot of us as adults today, we have troubles with our inner child. And that's why today you will have adult human beings around who are not normal because of childhood experiences, things that have been repressed in early childhood stage. So the infancy stage is the period of the construction of man. We must know this. So that little child that walks into your class is a man. That little lady, young girl that walks into your class, the woman. How many of us know science said that? I was reading it somewhere, that at the moment the female gender, when the child is birthed at birth, all the ovaries, no, what is the ovaries? Sorry. All the ova, that's the eggs that should be in the ovaries, is already formed. So if it's supposed to be, I don't know how many, I'm not a medical person. So if it's supposed to be 3,000 eggs that that woman is supposed to have in her life, that should be shedding every month, you know, once they get to menstruation side and have children, from the time the child is birthed, that 3,000 eggs is inside that baby. So this period of infancy is undoubtedly the richest stage. It is the richest stage of development. The waste of this period, they say, can never be compensated. Even if it will be compensated, it will be a lot of wahala. So we can't joke with this stage. I hope I'm stirring us up. If we touch children, we touch humanity. We must educate adults to realize that we can only better humanity through the child. We must realize the child is the builder of the man. So anytime we maltreat children, we're maltreating the adult inside that child. As early years educators, we should be advocates of ensuring that this stage of development is cultivated with utmost care. That's why we are here anyway. We cultivate it with utmost care. If we wish to understand man, we must first understand how man has been built. If there is one time in life when all men have the same ideas, when they speak the same language, it is at birth. So we need to take it seriously. Like I said earlier on, don't get tired of this. We're talking about Montessori philosophy, and all of it is about her quote. There's another period when we are all alike, and this is the period of childhood. All human beings follow the same laws when it comes to development. That stage is so powerful that we handle it with care. And when we do, then we know that the future is great indeed. Education is the help we must give to life. That's the first title in this particular lecture. So that it may develop in the greatness of its power to help those forces which bring the child inert and bad, unintelligent and unsympathetic. It brings them to the greatness of the adult being. So the plan should be, this should be the plan of education, to see that we're able to give the help that that child needs. So what am I trying to say? Childhood is a universal stage. Regardless of background, children across the world will pass through predictable developmental stages. These stages will follow natural laws of growth, of learning, of adaptation. But everything now depends on what the environment is given to each child per time, per the different stages. So that's why you find that a child that is educated in a particular community, a particular culture, can now be different from another child in another community, in another culture. The difference is just the exposure or the environment that the child is growing in. And that's why we must ensure that we give these young children very rich environment that would help to develop. Because at birth, like I said earlier on, that's what Maria Montessori called the spiritual embryo. That's what she's talking about. That child is, like helpless. It comes like not knowing anything. But what we make the child become what it's supposed to be is what we give the child in the environment. If we repress it, then that child will not become what it's supposed to be. But if we give the child all that is required, then the child will blossom. I brought something here. The implication for education, knowing that it's supposed to help to give life. Since all children through the same fundamental laws, since all children develop through the same fundamental laws, educators must create favorable environment that will respect these universal stages. So the goal for us as educators is to support the natural learning rather than impose rigid instructions. So the natural learning is knowing that every child has the potential to become what they're supposed to become, if only we give them the appropriate environment. You see, we are talking so much about environment. I'm stirring you up so that you start to think about your own environment. If you have a school now, or you are working in a place, be thinking about that, your learning environment. Is it meeting the needs of that child? So this is the Montessori method. This is the Montessori method. It's founded on the child himself. Study has its origin in the child. We already talked about her method. It was based on observation, observing children, observing how they are learning, observing how they are exploring, observing. There's something I'll read to us. I just pray we're already almost 2 hours gone. I don't think we'll be able to finish all these lectures, but we have 2 slides for Saturday, so we'll continue. I'm sure we'll be able to move to the next one, but I'll try and do 3 do the 3rd one before 10, because we'll finish at 10. So everything about Montessori method was on the child. It was not on any kind of theory from anywhere, based on observation. Tried and with result. And because the human is universal, what we work for the child in Asia, we work for the child in Africa. Yes, DNA can differ, but that will be slight difference. So the method has been achieved by following the child and the psychology of the child. The objective of the child. It is based on the ability to interpret observation of the phenomena which originated from the child. So every observation, how children learn, how they explore, how they concentrate on learning. There's a particular story, one of Maria Montessori's observation of a particular child that was, and this same thing, I've seen it in my own classroom too, working with children. They were in the classroom, and this 3-year-old child was working with some sets of cylinders. And Maria Montessori sat down watching this child working with that cylinders. The child will build the cylinders and we unbuild it, scatter it again, put it out, build it again. And by way of observation, she counted how many times the child was doing that activity, about almost 40 times. And she sat there. She said at the point, she got all the children in the class. I think she said there were about almost 30 children or so. I can't remember. I think it's part of what I will read in the book. The children were singing in the class, and this 3-year-old, she was oblivious of what was going in the class. She was super concentrated on the activity until she finished it the 40th time or so. That was when she stopped doing that activity. So her method is based on observation. So the transformation from birth to adulthood, at birth, a child is physically helpless and intellectually undeveloped. However, through proper guidance and nurturing, they develop intelligence, they develop empathy and independence. So they may be helpless, they may be intellectually undeveloped, but what we now give to them is what will result in what they're supposed to become. So what's our role as educators when we're talking about the Montessori method? Instead of imposing learning, educators are meant to facilitate the natural forces that drives a child's development. What's that natural force? Who can tell me what that natural force is? There's a name that is called. Unmute and tell me. What's that natural force called that drives them to want to learn?
Inner need, ma.
The inner need.
Need.
There's a name I called it. Thank you, ma. No wrong or right answer. Huh? Abiola, you wanted to say something?
I think she has spoken. She has said it. I said innate ability, or what's it called?
Yes, the inner drive. There's a name it's called.
Hemo.
Yes,
Home.
the home. The home.
Home. Home, rather.
H-O-R-M-E.
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm. So we are supposed to facilitate it. That's the answer to Oluwakemi's question. So when children come to your class, to your learning environment, to your nursery, and you find that they are dissipating energy anyhow, dissipating and just jumping here, what you need to look out for is observe what activities this child can be engaged in that will help. Let me use the regular normal word that will help to calm the child down. Once the child is involved in that activity, once concentration is taking place, look out what is taking that child's attention. Once concentration is taking place, you see that energy that keeps jumping up and down will start waning to be calming down. And that's why you begin to say, this child has calmed down. It's because the child is now focused. That energy is being channeled properly. So that's our role as educators. It means that we will provide a favorable environment, freedom within limits in that environment. So when we say freedom, opportunity to be able to self-direct their learning. I shared with you how in a Montessori environment, children will decide what activity they want to work with because, of course, you have introduced them to that activity. We'll go into those nitty-gritty in another 2 weeks where you will understand freedom with limits. So in other words, because there are ground rules. So where there are ground rules, it's not that children are just free to do anything. They are guided. The freedom is guided. And then because it's freedom with limits, you give them the opportunity to self-direct their learning. So they're able to direct their learning by themselves. That's how you become a facilitator. And then we'll look at the practicability as we go on. In other words, the ultimate goal for us as educators when we talk about Montessori method is to help the child to grow into a capable, thoughtful, and compassionate adult who contributes to society. Our role is to help the child grow to become a capable, thoughtful, compassionate adult who contributes to the society. Because in a typical Montessori environment, that society life is already in place. From that early stage, they're already learning how to work in a community, how to behave in a community, how to learn in a community, how to think about others in a community. So education in a Montessori environment is not just academic, it is about the total man. Because really, when you are talking about education and the mind is not being educated, there is wahala. That's the problem we have with adults today. That's why you look at a typical, I don't want to use the word Nigerian because adults are adults everywhere. The only reason why in some other society it looks like things work is because they have rules and they have consequences. If you don't do things right, you are punished instantly. You can't beg anybody. You can't dobale. You can't do anything. But humans are humans. When the mind is not properly developed to the point where the mind that is the seat of emotion can have emotional intelligence, can have self-regulation, to know how to self-regulate your emotion, to think about others. If that child grows up, it's going to be chaotic when the child is older or the child is an adult. But in a Montessori environment, every activity taking place is about the totality, is about the holistic development of the child. The physical is there, the mental is there, the emotion is there, body, soul, and spirit is all put together. All right? So the scientific pedagogy, the basic scientific principle for the Montessori method is the different mentalities at different ages. First years of life have great potential and powers. We've talked about that. And then the different periods when we can acquire different abilities. That's where we start to talk about the sensitive period. Knowing the fact that the emotional development, the mental development differs for different age group. And so activities or the environment we prepare for children between the age group 0 to 3 will differ when you compare it to children between the age group 3 to 6. Remember, we also still talk about the absorbent mind. 0 to 3 is unconscious, 3 to 6 is conscious. And knowing that these first years of life have great potential and powers, we're careful. We are very scientific about what we put in the environment of that child, because we want to cater for the different periods. We want to cater for this, we want to cater for the sensitive periods. We want to ensure that we do not miss those golden windows, so that when children are in the sensitive period for language, they have enough activities to refine that skill. When they are in the sensitive period for movement, there's enough activity to refine that skill. It is absolutely important for us to note that. Education based on psychology. If education is to be based on what we know of little children, what must we do? We must first understand their development. That is why we are going to use, I think it was 2 classes for child development. We have to, because if we do not, that's why we put pencil in the hand of a child whose wrist is not developed already. It's wahala. That's why a lot of us today, we have problem with handwriting. We have problem with handwriting. Meanwhile, have you researched or have you found out? Look at our parents. If you are in Generation X like I am, or you're a baby bloomer, look at our own parents. My father didn't go to a university. But my dad, my father didn't go to the university. If my dad writes in a plain A4 paper without line, he doesn't need a rule sheet to write. Beautiful handwriting. You know one of the secrets? You know, then they don't go to school early. They don't start school at 3 years old or 2 years old. That these days, before the child is 2, mommy has to go to work. They'll come and drop the child in school. And before child is 2, no previous activity, nothing, nothing that would develop the fine motor skill. We just put pencil in, and by the time we are putting pencil in the hand of the child, is one tiny pencil like this. I don't know if you are seeing my hand. You are seeing it. It's one tiny pencil, and then we force the child, and the child will hold pencil, and he's doing like this. And that's how the child will grow up with the wrist already deformed. That child can never have a good handwriting because the motor skill is already disrupted. So it is important that we know about the different developmental stage so we can help the child's learning. So we can't talk about education helping life without the planes of development. There are 3 6-year periods, each divided into equal periods of 3 years each. So we have them in this slide. These are the 3 periods of growth. Just, Mrs. Rahim, please mute your mic. So we have the periods of growth, the 3 periods of growth. We have the phase 1, that is birth to 6 years, the absorbent mind. Then we have the phase 2, 6 to 12 years, that's childhood. And then we have the phase 3, which is 12 to 18 years, the adolescents. Of course, the one that really concerns us for this course is the phase 1. Of course, phase 2 is also important because a lot of us, our school, we have our primary school, but we are not going deep into that. The one that concerns us is the absorbent mind, which is the phase 1, 0 to 6. And this is what we need to know is a period of rapid development. Child has incredible power of absorption. I've said this several times. They absorb powerfully from the environment. The child adapts to the environment quickly, and the child is a spontaneous learner driven by the home. What you will do, you get, let me quickly say that now, in case I forget. Said I'm going to share something with us. So what you are going to do, get index card. It will help you. I used to have a lot of this during my course. Get index cards like this. You find them, I don't know if you find them in shops here, maybe in Konga or whatever. I've not found them in bookshops here, but you can get, thank God that we have Temu that we can order on Temu from Nigeria here, and you get them delivered to you. So you have index cards like this, and just write out all these new words, terminologies that you're encountering. Write it out and go through it, read through them. It would help you to remember all these terminologies. All right, so that's the absorbent mind. I've talked about the spiritual embryo. Who will tell me what I said about the spiritual embryo? I've said it like 2 or 3 times. Unmute and say something. I want to know if you are listening or you are sleeping. And like, this woman is just talking, it's just making noise into my ears. Oh yeah, should I call somebody? Spiritual embryonic stage of unconscious learning. What did I say about it?
From what I understand, is a state at
Thank
which
you,
a
Lua.
child's mind, the mind is still let me use the word blank. Nothing is there. They only take from what they see in the environment.
What they experience.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Good. You got it. And so you find that between the age group 0 to 3, can you see this phrase? Indiscriminate absorption from the environment. It just absorbs so many things. So sometimes the child will say something and say, Kai, who told you that? Kai, why are you doing that? They will learn some bad habits that if you are not careful, you will beat life out of the child. But the child does not even understand what he's doing. He doesn't understand it. But because they're absorbing from the environment. Let me share one very, very sad event that happened in my school some time ago. The boy is 2+ going to 3. Then he was, this boy I'm talking about is out of university. He's an adult. Because he was in the same class with my baby, who is 25 now, my last born. And the teacher ran and brought her to my office. Hey, Mr. Agumede, see what I saw. His name is Ephraim. See what he was doing. And what was the child doing? She said that was the second time she saw him in the class doing that. There was another girl in the class. He would just take the child and go by the side of the class somewhere, one corner, and he would be pressing himself on the body of the girl and making some sexual sounds. And in fact, the teacher that brought her had already smacked the child's bum. I said, this child does not know what he's doing. So what is happening is this child is still sleeping on the bed with mommy and daddy. And the child will wake up in the middle of the night or whatever, and mommy and daddy will not know that the boy is awake. That's what is happening. So I told the teacher, once the mother comes, tell her to come and see me. She came to my office. The moment she sat down, the first thing I asked her was, why are you allowing your son to be sleeping on the same bed between you? Are you in one room? Or is there no cot? And the boy will not sleep on his bed. So you and your husband should have timing when you want to do the other room matter. When I told her what the boy did, she was crying. But the boy was just indiscriminately absorbing from his environment. So that's why it's very dangerous. At the same time, it's also very good if we utilize that stage to actually give that child beautiful. Next week, maybe I will show us one. I was trying to look for the video. I will try as much as possible, let it be the first video I will show us on Saturday of my grandchild when I bought a treasure basket for her and I put it in front of her and I had my camera stationed and I was timing for how long she was concentrating on the activity. And I'm talking about a child who she just started sitting down then, maybe like 6 or 7 months old then. So we need to intentionally prepare that environment for the child. So I said that the spiritual embryo is the concept that a child is born with potential for development. So the potential for development is there. It is not a preset abilities, but rather it is just like the way the physical embryo is. You know, the embryo, we call once there's conception and the baby is growing in biology, we call it embryo. So that physical embryo that grows following biological laws. And the moment the baby is growing, they will tell you, take your folic acid, no alcohol, don't do this. There are a lot of things they will tell you in your first trimester. Don't do this at all. Don't try it. The same way we take care of that physical embryo, that's how we're supposed to take care of the spiritual embryo stage, embryonic stage. The child's inner self unfolds naturally, and it is shaped by the experiences and the environment. So if at this stage, children are left, this one they say, let the child cry, go die. Cry, we open the well. Maybe the cry is the child is looking for attention or needs something or needs, at least see what you can do to meet the needs of that child at that time. If the child is neglected, neglect is a form of child abuse. It's in the World Health Organization it's part of the childhood trauma that people deal with now. Neglect. So when children are supposed to be cared for, either in daycare center, or that's why you need to be careful the kind of people you have in your daycare center. I used to have one nanny. You say, now so they do. He go keep quiet, leave him. You say, for where? If you need to train your child minders to ensure that that stage is not handled anyhow, it is absolutely important. Hey, God will help us. I'm looking at the time. So we'll finish in 9 minutes time. So we have the 3 to 6 stage. This is the social embryonic stage. At this stage, it is the conscious learning taking place. The mind becomes more conscious. Child begins to embrace social aspects. So they are now more conscious about the environment. Social cohesion is their conscious. That's when we begin to teach them empathy. We teach them to take care of other people, teach them about sharing, teach them about completing the activities, thinking about the other people who are also going to use the materials and all that. That stage is when we begin to teach them different etiquettes, so that they are able to act properly in a community. And of course, we have the childhood 6 to 12. I've said that we're not going to talk too much about it, but it's a time of rest and a period of power and mental strength, a time for work and mental application. Child at this stage develops group identity and they develop moral awareness. So that's why in 0 to 6, we do a lot of concretizing of their learning. So more of their learning is hands-on, concept formation, because by 6 to 12, abstraction begin to take place. But when they begin to learn, they are learning in abstract and they have not experienced it concretely, we begin to have problems. So those children will have a lot of challenges with math, science, because they have not concretized their learning at that early stage where they are able to, they have that power for concept formation through hands-on experience. So that's why we know that the age group 0 to 6, the learning that takes place during that time is absolutely very vital and very important. We do not joke with that period. Okay, this is the adolescence, and it's just there for us to look at. It's not part of our learning. All right, so what will happen is on Saturday, we're going to go into this a little bit. It's talking about heredity and creation. This is another topic on its own for lecture 3, but in this first period, the child will form himself or herself. The newborn child has already existed in physical embryonic stage. And so, if the physical embryonic stage is taken care of from the womb, we need to be conscious of what we are doing in the next stage. The the spiritual embryonic stage is as important as the physical embryonic stage. I wanted to read a portion to us. I think I will read it because I promised that I was going to read that to us. And that's where we will end. Lecture 5. All right. So please listen. It says, the most important part of the study of psychology today is the study of the child in the first period of life, especially in the first 3 years of life. So today in psychology, maybe we'll ask Uzoma. I don't know I think it's psychology you did, Abby.
Yes, child
psychology. Is it child psychology?
Child psychology.
Oh,
yes, ma'am.
You will take a lecture for us now. If I'm saying something, you'll be looking at me. This woman, she's not saying it right.
No, you're saying it very well. I'm learning a lot.
So it says that today, the most important part of study of psychology is the study of the child in the first period of life, especially in the first 3 years of life. The first period from birth to the age of 3 is followed by the period from 3 to 6 years of age. 3 to 6 is where all things that were acquired from birth, listen to this one. 3 to 6 is where all things that were acquired from birth to 3 are established through experience gained in the external world. So if nothing was experienced in 0 to 3, what will be experienced in 3 to 6? Nothing. You see where the wahala is, which is where this is why all stakeholders, there is important. Because if parents don't even do what else, most of the time, these children, they are 3 before they bring them to us. Then you begin to struggle. And the parents will tell you, this is what my child can do. This is what I want my child to do. Meanwhile, you have more work to do on that child. He says, because by the age of 6, you have a man. Should I repeat it again? By the age of 6, you have a man in your hand. So those children who are already in primary 1, primary 2, they are men. It is necessary to distinguish between and reflect on the 2 different things in the growth of human. Absolutely very important. If the first period, he must form himself, this is the most important period of all. I'm sure you agree with me. I mean, you agree with the lecture. Because everything comes from it. This newborn child has already existed in the embryonic stage. This too is a miraculous. Because from one cell with its mysterious capacity and wisdom, all the organs of the body are constructed. Not only is their form constructed, but all their functions. This function is full of mystery. She put there, marvelous. So in other words, if the physical human is formed like that, that's the physical embryonic stage, what do you think is happening to the psychic stage? What do you think the power would be for the psychic stage of man, the development? The same experience. A lot of us, we look at one cell. I did my first, I actually studied microbiology. So I worked in the lab. I worked in the hospital lab for years as a microbiologist. And we used to do, you know, people who have infertility problems, and the men will come and do sperm count. And you will see when they bring the container for the semen, a man that has serious, you know, the fertility is strong, you just put a little bit of the semen on the slide and cover it with the, put it on in the microscope, you will see the everywhere. Well, we used to count. We have a counter. You put it on. You have to tuk, 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 tuk. Most of the time, you will just add plus or 1,000 because you can't finish counting it. The sperms will be run all over, and you can't see it with your naked eye under the microscope itself. And from that tiny little thing, and the egg that you cannot see, a whole human being is formed. By the way, Maria Montessori was Catholic, so she also had the God factor in her. A lot of her books, you read things there and read about God. And from that tiny things you can't see with naked eye, a whole human being. Not only, like our people will say it's only in food that we say there's no God. From that tiny thing, heart forms out of it, stomach form, everything form, leg, yeah, eye, man. That is how powerful the psychic development is too. So if we neglect that one and just focus on the physical, we have not built the man. We haven't. The newborn child, the first 2 years are spent on the creation of psychic development. Can you see it? Psychic development. Any problem we are seeing in the life of adults today goes back to childhood. Goes back to childhood. There are some experiences I don't like sharing. I get very emotional. Things that we have seen. All right. So with that, we end our class for today. I know that some of you slept on me and you are like, Oluwa, what have I come to do? Is this all these stories we are going to do? Don't worry, we'll get to the sweet part later. But you must know this one. So this is your homework. I know you don't have this. So what I would do is, I have plenty of things. Please note this thing I said I will send to you people. I will forget to, because I didn't write it. So what I would do is, and I won't do all for you, because people have to go and buy. It won't be like I'm doing copyright wahala. I will scan this from my own book. I will scan lecture 1 to 5. I have a scanner on my phone. I just hope I'll be able to do it well. And then I will post it on the platform, not on the folder. So you can read it. And then don't forget, create index card for all the new terminologies encountered. Please, I beg you, by the mercies of God, do your own study. Where do we buy the books? Uzoma, you will check online, no? Initially, I said I will help people, but I don't have energy. It is available on, you will find it on Amazon. Hey, I told you that I have somebody who is coming on the 23rd of March. It's arriving 24th of 3rd of March. So if you need it, check on Amazon. If you are ready to buy it, I can arrange it for you. We'll buy it, we convert it to Naira, so you will know how much you will pay. I want you to just find out the price first. To buy it is not a problem, but once you are interested, just post on the platform. We'll work on that so that the person can come with it. Please, let's. Uzoma, I hope I answered that question. Okay.
Yes, ma. Thank you very much.
Somebody put a question here. Please, can
Yes,
you
my
mention?
homework. You want to see it again? It's not. It's off.
What do you want to see?
The assignment you put. The
Is in
homework.
your. Oh, is in. You have it now.
All right.
You have it in your folder. If you look at your lecture PDF, this thing I put on in your folder.
All
the
right.
lecture 1, lecture 2 at the last page is there. Uzoma, don't tell me that thing. Adverse childhood experiences. Thank you. That's what we call it. The childhood trauma. So it's a big, big thing that I actually did a little bit of what do you call it? Cognitive behavioral therapy course. So I know we talked about it. All right, I'm looking through question. How do we buy the books? Okay, I've answered that. Let me.
Ma, when you were talking about the 3 steps to observation, I was able to get the checklist method, the timing method. I missed out one. Please, can you?
The narrative.
All right.
The narrative method. I will post it on our platform.
Okay,
It's
ma.
much more than that. But
Okay.
I said I will give you my listing on observation, but I won't go through. It's not part of the course. But I will, if those of us who are ready to read, go and read it. It's what we can learn. It's good, but it's not part of our course. The whole program on its own. All right. Any other question? Kelly, are you in this class?
Yes, ma, I am. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I am. I lost audio for a while and
I didn't hear you.
But I've been in the class. It's very packed.
Yes, very packed too. See, I wanted us to do. I knew that we can't cover up the 6 slides, but we'll work on it on Saturday. Whichever way it goes. If we're going to take philosophy class for another extra week to add to our 12 weeks, but we just have to do it. It's important. All right, another question. Please, Ma, has the folders been sent? Vera, since when? Where have you been?
Yeah, please, I have a question.
Who is talking?
It's Chinelo.
Chinelo.
Concerning the assignments, I've been able to go through the materials you sent for the week, even though I wasn't sure where to start from, if we are supposed to wait for the teachers before we start.
No, wait for the teaching to end. Don't start yet.
Right. Oh,
please,
okay.
don't start the assignment because you'll be lost. Let's finish for the week 1. Let's finish the slides. Then you start to work on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Vera, you said you have, has the folders been sent? Because I'm yet to see one. Did you receive the email for the Google Drive?
No, ma, I've not received any email.
Okay. So that means I will look through it again. If you have not received yours, just send a DM to me. Send a DM to me. So is either the mail is in your spam mail. Somebody sent that to me and I said, check the spam mail, and she got it. Oh. Folakemi, it was empty. Please, I received it, but it's empty. Empty. I'll go back and check. So please, don't stop with the message here. Send a DM to me, those of you who have problems, so I can address it. If it means for me to just pick the link directly and send to you, then I'll have to do that. But don't forget to send the message to me. All right, any other question? What you will do now, I know you don't have assignment, we won't do your assignment now. Create index card. It doesn't have to be this kind of card, cut cardboard. Put your punch like this. You don't even have to use punch. You can just staple it. Anything that is, and just all these new terminologies that you've learned now, absorbent mind, unconscious, social embryonic stage, spiritual put it there and write it out in your own words. So you can get used to these terminologies and you know what it means. All right. Okay, we are 10 minutes gone. We'll see you on Saturday, 7 p.m.
All right.
Okay.
God bless you, ma'am. Thank you.
Have a
God
blessed.
bless.
Good night,
Yeah.
ma'am.
All right. Good night.
Thanks so much, ma.
Bye.
Good night, ma.
Bye.
Good night.